Welcome to a special holiday edition of Your Impact Attack. That's right, it's Your Impact Attack coming to you live on Christmas night. And I hope that Santa has brought you everything you asked for because Impact sure as hell didn't. But that's okay. Maybe when it's TNA, Santa will start bringing you more current stuff, more timely stuff, more interesting stuff. Maybe that's when he will bring it to you, the C and the VBC. And let's introduce the VI live. And we're back. And who knows what's going on. All right. We're here.
I
We're ready to rock. And I was tagging in Brandon. I tagged him so hard the internet went out. Brandon, what's going on?
Not much, man. I do want to apologize ahead of time. Things might be a little weird tonight because I'm having to do this from my laptop because my computer just completely died on me.
It's beautiful. Everything's wonderful. This is a Christmas miracle, and whatever the opposite of miracle is, disaster. I don't know. Whatever. It's great. But we're gonna get through this, and hopefully you guys will carry us. And by you guys, of course, who is with us as we speak tonight, Brandon?
Let's see. We got Chris Winland, Javi Uchida, Lab Rat, Lisbeth, Al Robinson, Sonic the Hedge Rat. How you guys doing? Hope you're having a Merry Christmas. Whoop whoop. Let's get geared up. Of course,
Yes,
there's
it's certainly a
nothing really to get geared up about, unfortunately.
no. Unfortunately, no. But we're here to give you a little something. Just a little present, just a little something in the stocking, not a piece of coal like we got from the company that we're here to talk about. And I guess we should just talk about some, just a couple little interesting news tidbits. We won't talk too much about Christmas because I'm sure we all had better Christmases. Let's I hope you guys are having a great one, but let's just get a couple of news items out of the way, one of the which is and we will talk about this during the show as well, but you know, some re-signings and some signings done by TNA. People are re-upping their contracts as we're getting ready to sort of relaunch the promotion and everything like that. A couple of ones that are mentioned here in this article I'm looking at. Of course, the re-signing of Eddie Edwards. They've re-upped Fat Eddie's contract. I assume that there are many more provisions for his provisions at catering. And, I assume his wife still won't be getting any. Her contract is probably not tied to this in any way. And signing Kushida officially, of course, we've talked about this, I think, a little bit, but he just spoke on it, talking about how he thinks he's the best junior heavyweight of his time in Japan. Scott D'Amore says this on Busted Open Radio, and so sadly for Media M5, yes, not only did they not fire Kushida, they actually hired Kushida officially. So there you go. Labra says, can TNA afford the food bill? They cannot. They're going to have to get downgraded back to Impact once again. Okay. Are we back? Are we back? Are we in there? Okay.
Good. We're in.
Locker room leaders are few and far between, and Eddie has really stepped up over these last handful of years and kind of took that, not by words, which is certainly important, but by his actions and his approach to everything day after day. So we make fun of a lot of a lot of Eddie Edwards. We call him Fat Eddie, and we call his wife thin and not eating and all these other stuff, and we joke around a lot. Truthfully, Eddie hasn't done that much wrong, other than just sort of having mediocre matches. But a lot of that is the positions he's put in. Like they hand him a lot of bullshit, and he can't carry it off. I would argue that nobody could carry it off. I mean, what was Eddie Edwards going to do with the whole Honor No More thing? Like that was a shit show from the start. It sucked. What was Eddie Edwards going to do with this laughably bad Killer Kowalski Memorial Series? We could just the Killer Kowalski Cup. That's 1K away from being dangerous. Um, I think that he's had to do a lot that the PCO things, like nobody was coming out of this stuff any good, and this guy started, his career as a tag team wrestler to break out into singles. So it's just an uphill struggle for Eddie Edwards like this whole time, and I guess he's doing what he can. Uh, but even with that, I've never really seen it. But I've also seen enough to know that he's not the absolute, as Jim Cornette might say, the absolute teetotal shits. It's just he looks a lot worse than what he is given what he's given. Wouldn't you say, Brandon? Or how do you assess Eddie Edwards and Impact?
Yeah, if you go back and look at what he's been doing these last few years, they handed him a lot of like bad shit. Kind of like, the only thing I can compare it to is like back in the day, they gave The Undertaker all these immobile giants. All right, get this guy over. Like, it's impossible.
Yes.
Although I will say the Honor No More in the very beginning felt like they had a different direction and we're going to go somewhere else with it. And then Tony Khan bought it and it just kind of dropped.
Yeah. Yeah, it quickly slid into boring cliches, and whether that was their fault or not, as far as the ownership of Ring of Honor or any of that stuff, ultimately, what they had in their hands was just fumbled it, you know? You can't blame any other outside factors for what ended up on their program. That's on them, and they blew it, and it was, uncreative and boring, and it made no sense.
There's a way that they could have pivoted off that and went somewhere else, but they didn't.
Nope. And people just aren't willing to take a look at where we can go with pro wrestling. When we talk about, Stevie Richards, I usually promote him at the end of the show, but we'll throw him in here. He had a video that came out today about instant replay in wrestling, like as an idea. And even though I don't personally, I don't agree with the instant replay idea now, because if we were to do instant replay now, if we're just talking about inserting instant replay into wrestling as it is now, that's not going to work. It just won't. It's just like anything else they do. It'll be like they'll do it when it's convenient for them, and they will not do it most of the other times, right? But he brings up a larger point at the end of the video talking about, and tell me if this sounds like anything you've heard me say over the past years here at HMG. If NFL's getting ratings and the WWE's not, so if you start overhauling and implementing an idea of we have rules in wrestling that we have to stick to, and now you build your creative around the rules to make it work, right? And go towards that, right? That's where wrestling can evolve to something more resembling reality, and less these movies where PCO's unburying himself from the Las Vegas desert and walking back to the venue, right? Like we need to get away from one of those things and maybe more towards the other things, because one of those things is working in the real world and wrestling's on the decline. So to that degree, I look at those kind of creative decisions, like with Honor No More, I look at that as part of that category, right? Like you actually had guys that you're talking about, they don't work for Impact, but here they are just having matches, and the matches are deciding things about the company's future. Like, get the fuck out of here. That'd be like the Canadian Football League coming into the NFL and just challenging teams to football games. It's like, oh, we're playing by CFL rules now, and if we win, then we take over the NFL. Like, nobody in the real, everybody would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why would Roger Goodell allow this? It's just there's so we need to get away from goofiness and get back to like something resembling a reasonable sports product. And then when you say that, people think, you know, they think that you can't have entertainment or flamboyant characters or interesting stories or anything like that. They think you're just saying no, you just want to have just matches all the time, but it's not. It's not a either or thing. It's a way to integrate everything that's good about pro wrestling that we all love, but give it a grounding, a foundation and stuff to build upon. So yeah, if we had things like that, then people like Eddie Edwards wouldn't have to work so hard to try to get some of this shit over, I think is my ultimate point.
No, I think I get what you're saying. Like essentially establish ground rules that are consistent and you stick to.
Right. You know how it is. I mean, as a referee, you know that it's like you feel like sometimes based on finishes or other stuff, it's like you're only paying attention to the rules when it suits the match at hand and you're not keeping it consistent across the entire card, or in the case of Impact, a television show that goes for 52 weeks a year, except for clip shows or whatever. You know, it's like you pull out random rules when it, you know, when it applies to you. There's different rules for overtime, you know, or like restarting matches or whatever it is, you know. So
a lot of the times you usually hear the announcer try to cover it by saying, "Oh, it's referee's discretion."
Right. Which sometimes, well, if you do that though, you have to have that be part of the referee's character now. Like you have to have referees, maybe a heel ref or you know, whatever. Like those kind of things. Like you have to integrate it in a way that makes sense that people can know what to expect, right? So, but anyway, that's just a long way to say that Eddie Edwards is re-signed. So, you know, congratulations to him. The other kind of news, I guess, that's going on this sort of past couple days is some stuff regarding another person that we promote on their show at the end of every show, because Wrestling with Rip Rogers has recently had Stephen P. New as a guest, and based on some things that he has said in conjunction with things that previous Wrestling with Rip Rogers guest Ace Steel has said, has prompted other people to come out of the woodwork and chime in with their 2 cents on the situation. So basically what happened was, Ace Steel was on. He said his wife, you know, did not sign an NDA around the brawl out incident. And so maybe one day she could tell her story. And then that was that thing. So that was, you know, whenever that happened, 3 weeks ago. Then Stephen P. New was on this past Friday, and he's just a wrestling fan, and he's talking. And of course, Von Lilas asked him, you know, like what was true, what can he say, what can't he say, or anything like that. And he confirmed what Ace Steel had said. He also confirmed that, you know, his dealings with those guys in their defense, they were stand-up people, so he's a big fan of that. And that yes, his wife did not sign an NDA, and anyway, that she was the only person that had not signed the NDA, or, you know, whatever. At least so we thought, because you know, Chris Jericho decided to chime in and say that, hey, I didn't sign an NDA. So he kind of went a little bit back and forth with Stephen P. New on Twitter, which is funny. But do you have any of those tweets? I don't remember exactly how many. I only saw a couple of them, but I don't know if there were more than that. But
I think I can find him here.
So while you're looking for that, that's basically, you know, Chris Jericho was saying, you know, go ahead.
Yeah, so Stephen New replied, and he said, "It's in your employee handbook unless you have a special one. We can figure it out." That's which Jericho replied, "Hey, Stephen P. New, I don't adhere to an employee handbook, and I have never had one in 4 years of working for AEW. I've also never signed an NDA in my life, ever. So stop trying to be a bully and make egotistical fantasy brags for your clients and start doing some research." And then Nick Hausman chimed in and said, "What about the NDAs you make other people sign," which led to him getting blocked.
Nick Hausman got blocked?
Yep, by Jericho. And then Chris Jericho's reply to Stephen P. New about not adhering to a handbook is quote tweeted by Jim Cornette, and he says, "God, Chris, it's Xmas. Slap Tony's out of your mouth. You got his dad's money the next 10 years, and the Buckaroos will still let you play with the cool kids. You don't have to tell the truth. Just quit lying. Punk is sorry he made a difference in AEW business, and you haven't."
Well, there you go. I mean, you could also say Cornette could slap Punk's dick out of his mouth if he wants, but nonetheless, we both got people marking out here. If you didn't see Stephen P. New, which again, I will remind you at the end of the show to go and check out Wrestling with Rip Rogers and Stephen P. New as an interview. Stephen P. New is a delightful man. There's nothing about him that's bullying or what was the word that he used? He said fantasy bragging, or what was that?
Yeah.
What was that?
Oh yeah, fantasy client bragging or something like that.
Fantasy client bragging. I'm quite sure Chris Jericho did not check out this interview one bit, or doesn't know anything about Stephen P. New, or has heard him talk about anything or whatever. Stephen P. New is just a very nice guy. He's just a wrestling fan. He's a big wrestling fan from way back. He's not one of those guys that's like, hey, I watched the Attitude Era with Stone Cold and The Rock and decided I like wrestling one day. He was going to, he was going to those ICW wrestling shows to see Rip Rogers back when that was like the Macho Man Randy Savage and Lanny Poffo and their dad starting that whole promotion as an outlaw promotion and trying to, start shit with Memphis. And he goes back that far as a wrestling fan, and he just likes wrestling, and he still likes wrestling, and he still likes AEW wrestling, and he puts over AEW wrestling. So, the idea of him bullying people, no, he just seems like a very nice man. Now, he could just be working everybody. Maybe he is an asshole, who knows? But my point is, I'm quite sure that Chris doesn't know anything about Stephen P. New, but I'm basing that on the fact that I also believe him when he says he doesn't have an employee handbook. I've seen the employee handbook. I didn't not seen it like I leafed through it or anything, but I've seen pictures of what the people have, the talent has, or has been distributed. And if Jericho did not get one, that's fine. I can imagine him being too over to get this kind of trust me, at my job, management ducks me all the time because I'm over. Okay. So so I understand that, but to the other people, they will definitely try to push them around and micromanage them. Right. So, that's how that can happen. So yeah, maybe Chris didn't sign an NDA because they didn't think it was important enough for him to sign one. Or that he would just go blabbing about it all over the place. Maybe they just trust him on word of, his word, like, hey, don't talk about this, Chris. And he's like, okay. And they don't need to sign any papers, or they don't need to hand him a handbook or anything like that. I mean, both things can be true. But I definitely think that this whole thing is unnecessary and interesting. It's kind of like, well, if you're going to pipe up and say, hey, I didn't sign an NDA and all this other stuff, then okay, well, why don't you tell your side of the story then? Why don't you dispute what nobody has said anything either? They can't because they're under NDAs. So if you're not under one and you feel like you want to chime in, then say something that nobody else has said. If not, what are you doing? Just wondering. And Revamped is coming in, chilling to some beats. So appreciate you, man. Hope you're having a great holiday. along with everybody else here. So yeah, Brandon, what do you make of all this foolishness? It doesn't seem like the don't sell it Terry Runnels shit that we like to put over Ben Hameen and I.
Uh, like you said, like if he has something to say, why not say it? But the
Yeah.
thing that because nobody's talking, that's what's kind of tells the story.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So well,
But
whatever people
some
have said, they've all agreed to it. Like as far as the NDAs and the settlements and everything like that, that's all agreed. So if Chris Jericho is to come out and say some shit, he could get sued, which is another reason why he probably wouldn't. Right?
yeah, but Ace Steel's wife got a little bit of money in a book deal.
Hmm. Yep. So Labrat says the big question is, will Brian find Jericho? Yeah. Will he? Well, I don't know. That all remains to be seen. You know what else remains to be seen? Anything fresh from Impact Wrestling going into the TNA rebrand. That also remains to be seen. We do not see anything, and we are so happy to be able to do a nice show for you guys and hang out and say hello and wish you guys a happy holidays and hear from you and hear your great comments and everything like that. We are very grateful and appreciative. I think I can speak for Brandon here when I say that. But we're also not going to keep you too long, just in case you guys have anything else to do, or just you don't want to hear about a recap show for that long. But that's basically what we got here. It's the best of 2023 part 1. So you know there's more coming. Labrat says just give us a moose package. Well, guess what, Labrat? Spoiler alert. You're not even going to get moose on this part 1 of best of 2023. Maybe that's partly because Moose didn't have shit good to do in 2023 and he was wasted all year other than signing like the longest deal ever in the company's history and then having nothing to show for it one way or the other than winning a Feast or Fired briefcase, which I'm sure will be on next week's episode. But yeah, no Moose on this. Very disappointed. That's the equivalent of us getting coal in our stockings, like as viewers. Like, here you go, guys. Thanks for supporting the product. No Moose. You don't get the best thing on it. You know? So, Liz has some hot updates. Billy Kay from the Iconics had a baby, and Cassie is pregnante. So, Mr. Sean Spears has been spearing Cassie, and apparently he's hit the bullseye at least once. So, congratulations.
Yes, congrats to the couples.
Mm-hmm. But as for us, we've got to talk about this. So let's just get into it. Let's get into it and get it over with. What do you got to say, Brandon?
I kind of have to ask the question since pregnancy was brought up in childbirth. I have to wonder what actually is worse, that or having to watch these clip shows week in and week out?
Well, I would say watching this clip show is, it's probably about equal to like one bout of morning sickness. So ultimately it's easier to watch these clip shows. It's shorter. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, like if you're comparing little windows of your life, as like, like when you get close to death and your life passes before your eyes, none of this stuff from this Impact show is probably going to make it into your highlight reel. So yeah, I don't know. Bigger waste of time, perhaps. I don't know, man. But so what I did here was it's not going to come across the way I wanted because I was hoping it would be more interesting. But I tried. I put in some effort and I tried. And so what I did was, since they're going back and just recapping shit, I went through the archives of channelattitude.com or whatever, and I went back and said, what did we say about this when we did the actual coverage of it, right? So I was hoping to get like a fresher perspective on it. Unfortunately, it looks like, we didn't have that much to say about a lot of this shit at the time. So it's not going to come across the greatest, but I want you to know I put in extra time and effort on right here on Christmas Day to try to be more entertaining for you, or try to give you more for your value than Impact did. So, I apologize if it's not the greatest, but it's just a little something I tried to do. Just know that I tried. So let's start out with Hard to Kill 2023. That'll be the next time that we have new content, I guess, and TNA is rebranding. But back here 1 year ago, we were doing the whole thing with Bully Ray versus Josh Alexander with their Full Metal Mayhem match. That's what they're showing you on this clip show. So this match, for context, opened Hard to Kill, like not counting the pre-show, but they started with the Full Metal Mayhem. I believe it may have been Lab Rat who in the comments I saw was like, Bully just wanted to leave early or something to that effect. Like he's Brock Lesnar, like I'm coming in, I'm doing my match first and leaving.
You want to beat Eddie to catering.
Yeah, just right. Well, it's too late. He was already there. As soon as Bully went through the curtain, he was already planted at catering, right? So there was no chance. But so they started that show. And if you want to go back and hear what we said, not that what I guess when I gave that preamble, I wasn't saying that what we said back then wasn't entertaining. It was. It wasn't enough to really make notes on and quote ourselves, like it wasn't that, I'm not that self-aggrandizing, but if you did care to go back and check out some of these things that we said, this would have been the January 12th Impact / Hard to Kill review, for Impact Attack. And basically what we said was, this was one you didn't, I think, Brandy, you hadn't watched. So you were counting on my review to catch you up to speed of what happened. And this was the one where I just wrote down here, illogical finish to a literal and figurative garbage match. Because that's what Full Metal Mayhem is. And the finish was he kicks out of Josh Alexander splashed him through a table and some thumbtacks or something. And then Bully Ray kicked out. And so Josh immediately puts him in the ankle lock and he taps out, right? So I explained how that was a terrible finish because in everything that Bully Ray had done to Josh Alexander and his wife and whatever, like all this antagonizing that he'd been doing, all this stuff. And, I explained how, look, an ankle lock is a joint lock and it's basically threatening that I'm going to break your leg and not, it's not actually like a painful submission hold until it becomes painful and goes too far. And I said, if you're Josh Alexander, why wouldn't you just break his leg, break his other leg, break his arm, break his other arm, and have Bully Ray in traction? Why wouldn't you do that to somebody that if somebody put their hands on my wife and I get him in a fucking wrestling ring with no rules, I'm just going to break all of his limbs. And so the idea that you're like, hey, you better tap out, fat boy, or I'm going to cripple you. And then you just don't cripple him. Like, okay, well, I'm no longer interested in Josh Alexander. So that's basically, I explained that in much greater detail and everything.
And we also we had that whole thing with Alexander not being able to control his emotions. And here he is in an anything goes match where he has a guy who attacked his wife.
Mm-hmm. Keep your emotions in check, Josh. Terrible. Terrible. That's terrible. So also from Hard to Kill, they show us the some highlights of the Mickey James versus Jordan Grace match. And this is the one where it was like the last rodeo and Mickey's career is on the line and she has to win the belt. And she wins the belt. What we said back then, and once again, that is the January 12th, 2023 Impact Attack. Uh, I said that they didn't have the right match for the situation. I don't remember what that means now, but I know at the time I felt like the story they were trying to tell of like the, you know, the aging veteran, you know, trying to just show that they still got it. I don't think they really had the match for that. And that was also the match where I talked about Mickey doing that tap out. If you remember that, and we were
Yeah.
talking about the phantom tap out that was never seen by anybody except for me, apparently, because they never really brought it up after that. And then going into another match that she had, she did a similar thing where it was like we were speculating whether she was trying to give herself outs or give her opponents outs on why, you know. So we never really figured out. I said the phantom tap out remains a mystery to this day. We don't know where they were going with that, if anywhere, because it never fully materialized. But it was definitely an awkward spot in the match. So that was that's what we said back then.
I think I do remember even
Okay.
seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like she had like Jordan Grace had Mickey in a sleeper, and Mickey did this, and then the ref didn't see it. Jordan let go, and they went in. Or Jordan didn't even let go. Mickey did like she rolled into like a pin or something, and then she ended up winning the match. But you know, at the time, I was questioning like, are they turning this into an angle where she just did that to make Jordan let up and then took advantage of it? Because that's happened in mixed martial arts before, where a guy will tap out to make the guy let go and hope that the ref doesn't see it. So that way, you know, they can continue fighting and not have to give up. So I wondered if they were trying to do something like that. Never really got a full picture of it. That could have been something Mickey was trying to get over by herself, and they never went anywhere with it. So still a mystery.
Like those photos of Dusty.
That's right. A midget, a beating off in a trash. Speaking of which, TNA Plus is going to be available on January 5th, starting at $9.99. Starting, which means there's higher tiers. So what was it? Was it $4.99 currently?
I want to say $7 or $8.99.
Oh, okay. All right. So we'll get a comparable, but it's still a price increase at the low tier, which I don't know what you're not getting with the low tier. But hey, Endeavor needs a new pair of shoes. So pay up. And then they give us the first award of the night, which is Knockouts Tag Team of the Year. Now, I'm sorry, but I didn't see any. At no point during this show did I see any list of nominees where they like teased it, like coming up after break, we'll show you which one of these teams won. You know, they didn't do that. I didn't see, you know, not that I follow them. Maybe they gave you a place you could vote. Don't know if anybody has any answers to any of these things, like where we could have possibly changed the outcome of these awards. Let me know in the chat right now. But as far as I was concerned, they just announced it and here's your winner without any competition. So that being said, the tag team of the year in 2023, MK Ultra, as Liz says, they were really the only real tag team this year. Yep. I mean, I can't argue with that. And even that, like part of it, they didn't even have a tag team name. They just came out separately and wrestled together. Yeah, Lab Rat says imagination. That's where we did it. We imagined the nominees and they told us. Yep. And then they get a little promo or whatever. And Taylor Wilde drew tarot cards on the winners, Liz says. Yes, that's good. That would have been the other tag team, the Coven. Remember the Coven? They were probably nominated in our imagination. Yeah, and MK Ultra cuts a promo, you know, they'll just keep lesing it up in 2024 is basically what they said. So that's fine. Look forward to that.
And I like the dynamic they have when at the Masha speaking first in Russian and then Kelly translating it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why not? Now, all Impact or TNA has to do is, have a division that these two can actually compete in, and or it means something. So,
Where have
but
the
I
Death Dolls been?
did. Or remember that? Well, yeah, the Death Dolls changed personas but kept the name. Right, right. Like,
Yep.
they're two different people, but they're still the Death Dolls. Yeah, I don't know. But we can get them. We can get a couple of. We get the. I don't know if the Coven's coming back. I don't know if Taylor Wilde. I forget what was happening with her. If she was injured or whatever happened.
I think she did get injured, and they revealed that it was Kylan King who attacked her, and because she felt like she was a weakness or something like that. I don't remember, but I do
Right.
remember that it was Kylan King who did it.
That's right. She tried to say other people did it, and then she took the credit herself. Great. Well, I guess they're not coming back. All right. Then we get to Impact 1000. I guess part 2 technically. Because that was another thing they turned into 2 episodes. Impact 1000 and 1001. This was the 10 Knockouts tag team match, which we all remember, and this is what we said on I guess the 921 Impact Attack, I think. If not, it's around there. It's the next one after that. I forget whether, but this was the match that was we had Jimmy T as a guest on the episode where they set this up with an Impact the Music Volume 1 parade of knockouts that took 30 minutes off the top of the show. So we talked about that. That was fun. And then on the next episode, they actually had the match, and we essentially summarized it with this was the match where Gail got concussed and continued the match, in which I laid out my assessment, and you agreed that it was nobody's fault but just an unlucky bump. And then we also agreed that Awesome Kong looked good in the match, but the match itself was nothing really memorable. So if you want to hear our thoughts on that, go check out those Impact 1000 episodes starting around the September 21st episode. But yes, you remember that debacle with the parade, right? The Hit Everybody's Music parade.
30 minutes.
Remember they cut off they went to break in the middle of Awesome Kong's entrance. Like, that's how long it was. Hey, remember Awesome Kong? She's back. We got to go to break. Brilliant. Okay. TNA figures coming in March. All right, let's hope they don't get canceled again. All right. The next clip was from Rebellion of this year, which took place in April at the Rebel Entertainment Complex in Toronto, which we also put over the venue for looking cool. This was the Ultimate X match with the Guns versus ABC. What we said back then was, this was another one. I think you hadn't watched the Rebellion pay-per-view for whatever reason. And I just said, my note, I said on the episode of the April 13th episode of Impact Attack, I said, my notes on this match was stuff. They did stuff. You can imagine if it's the Machine Guns and ABC, it was going to be stuff. But I also commented that for an Ultimate X match, it was short. It was under 15 minutes with entrances, I believe. And why did this open the show? We could have made it feel a little more important. Unless these guys had other places to be, like Bully Ray or, Brock Lesnar or all these other over guys. Maybe that's why. But it seemed strange. Like they wanted to start off the show with action, but they cut it short. And you normally, if something's going to get cut, your time's not going to get cut in the first match of a pay-per-view. You're not even going to know you're going long until, so I found it weird that they didn't have more time blocked out for this. So that's what we said back then, and you can listen to not much of more of a review than stuff from me, but we did talk about the odd placement of the match, which leads into our next award, which is the Male Tag Team of the Year. That's right, ABC, Chris Bay and Ace Austin, they win, and that's as simple as 1-2 sweet. So congratulations to ABC. Would you concur that ABC was the tag team of 2023?
For Impact, at least, if you look at it from a kayfabe point of view, they had the best year.
Yep. Trying to think of anybody else. Again, not a strong tag team division there.
I mean, you could say Rascals would be up there.
Well, unless you're, you have to acknowledge the fact that they was really only the Rascals for the last couple of months, because Zachary Wentz wasn't there most of the year. It was mostly Trey Miguel doing stuff, and we were commenting on how he couldn't time his spray paint entrance. So Liz says Blake.
That should have been a best of the year.
Yeah, best. That would have been a more entertaining compilation. I think he came close one time out of the several times that he did it. Just once he came close. He didn't even nail it. He just came close. So there you go. And Merry Christmas to Buckshot Kid who has joined us. Appreciate everybody coming and checking in. Even if you just have to check in and leave, that's fine. This is just a special extra Christmas gift for you guys. Rebellion still for our next match. It's Macklin versus Kushida, and this was for the vacant Impact Championship. So what we said back then on once again, that was the April 13th episode. What I said was this was a great match thanks to Kushida. It was probably, if I had to say match of the year, based on my memory and how I put this over watching myself talk about it, I think I like this match the best. I liked a lot of the storytelling that Kushida did in this, and the reason I gave the credit to Kushida was because I've seen Macklin matches, and none of them were this good. So I have to assume that Kushida had a lot of input on this. And I'm not just putting Kushida over because he's a New Japan guy. I never really cared as much for Kushida in New Japan when I was watching. It's nothing against him. It's just there was a lot more interesting and exciting guys in New Japan during that time. So Kushida kind of seemed plain in comparison. But he sticks out a little bit more in TNA just because everybody else there is just like not Moose, So he had a good match here, and I put that over. And if you want to hear that again, April 13th. Then after they recap this match, they talk about who TNA re-signed and signed. So as we already mentioned, they re-signed Fat Eddie. They re-signed Brian Myers. They re-signed the Rascals, both of them, and then they signed Kushida, who we talked about. We talked about them signing Jade Chung, Josh Alexander's wife. They also signed Danny Luna officially, but they didn't say anything about the other, what are their names? Subculture?
Yep.
Yeah, didn't say anything about them. So maybe they don't want to move back to the States, or maybe they are living in the States and nobody cares, or I don't know. I don't know what's up with Subculture. But as far as I know, they're back in England and just doing stuff over there. So, but we got Danny Luna. So the thickness has arrived. One more match from this year's Rebellion.
Ooh,
I guess Rebellion down with the thickness. If you, and also that was, just to keep it in times with TNA, Monty Brown's theme song was one of those facsimiles of Down with the Sickness by Disturbed. So, you know, shout outs to the Alpha Male, one of my favorite TNA wrestlers or wrestlers, period. Period. Um, but yeah, the main event of this rebellion, which was a good show. You have anything to add to about Monty Brown, the Alpha Male? We could always stop the show and talk about the Alpha Male at any point in any of our shows.
Such a shame his career never went as far as it could have. That guy had so much charisma. He could have been the next Rock.
Yeah, I loved him. Did I tell you the story about being at WrestleMania and seeing a bunch of guys just milling around backstage, and the only people I was really interested in, because you're not allowed. The thing is, you're not allowed to mark out, right? Because not only am I not a mark by nature, but you just can't, even if you wanted to. Like you're representing, for my case, it was OVW, whatever. Like, so I didn't want you can't bring any heat back on them. Otherwise they'll never ask for extras from you guys, or it's just bad. Right. So you have to be professional, but you're not on their level. So you can't really just sit and talk shop with these super over guys. But at the same time, you can't just be a fan either, because it'll be like, get this mark out of my face. So you're kind of in a no man's land, especially on a day as busy as that, right? But there weren't even that many people there wasn't much I had to say to. But I was really looking forward to meeting Monty Brown, right? And he was Marcus Corvon at the time, and he had a match. That was the match. That was the year he had the match. It was like the ECW Originals versus the New Breed, or whatever they were being called. It was like an 8-man tag. So I saw him sitting there in catering, and this was like, I was sitting in one part of catering. He was sitting sort of across the room in catering, and everybody was kind of sitting down watching the show at that point. No one was really milling around as much. It was just one of those moments, like, how, like, when you're in, like, let's say you were in school, and then the classroom's all loud, everybody's talking and being unruly. And then, like, maybe you say something like sounds kind of goofy, and it's that moment that everybody is quiet just long enough for you to be heard over everybody else, right? Like, that feeling where you get singled out accidentally. It was kind of like that, except I didn't do anything. But I saw him there, and I noticed him, and I was like, this would be a good chance to go over and shake his hand and introduce myself, whatever. But if I were to do that with everybody sitting down, the entire room would have seen one guy get up, cross the room, and go talk to another guy sitting down. And you just can't do that. You can't do that, bro. It would have just been like, everybody would have just been like, huh? Because we were all sitting. So I couldn't interrupt it. And I never saw him again after that. That was the only time I ever saw him by himself, approachable. And it was across a room full of people that I could not cross. So I missed my chance. And then shortly after that, he had to quit the business due to a family emergency. So that's why we never got to see the full potential. But shout outs to the Alpha Male. He's still awesome. If anybody remembers him doing a promo for, I think it was Lance Archer a couple years ago. Like, he did a Twitter promo. Yeah, putting him over. So he's still got it. He just not active anymore. So yes, what could have been. But here in Rebellion, we're looking at another vacant championship. This is Jordan Grace versus Deonna Purrazzo for the Knockouts Championship. And what we said back then was that Deonna Purrazzo invented a pile driver to win this match, and she she became the champ, as well as her husband, her real life husband. So we had a husband and wife champ team as we leave Rebellion. So don't know if that's ever happened in wrestling before. Maybe that's one of the reasons they wanted to book it that way. Ultimately, neither one of these people would have the title for long. But yeah. So there you go. So Rebellion got what was this 3 matches from the show on this best of thing. So clearly it was one of their better shows of the year. That's kind of how I remember it, being one of the better shows besides just the venue and everything else. So if you check out one event from 2023, may I suggest Rebellion? I guess. All right, now here's the next award that we're getting is the One to Watch in 2024 award, which is kind of an unwieldy, non-catchy title. But Kylan King wins this. And she starts being humble and thankful, and then she flips it and she says, the only thing I can say accepting this award is duh. Who else were you going to vote for? And then she cuts a heel promo and basically says, hey, I'm one to watch in 2024, essentially is what she says. So Kylan King, is that the one to watch in 2024, Brandon?
Maybe.
That's about the level of enthusiasm I feel here for.
Like, they did nothing to spice these awards up at all. Remember how they'd actually put effort into the Slammies, as ridiculous and goofy as it was? At least there was effort.
Yeah, I do. Well, we certainly weren't going to get that from this company. Everybody in Tuxes, that's already the whole budget. Just renting a Tuxes. It's the yearly budget one night. I'm not going to do that. I would accept somebody spilling an entire tray of pitchers of beverages on somebody, though. That's always good. Well, don't worry. We'll have more awards next week. I didn't write down which ones they were. They said which ones were going to be next week, but I didn't write them down. Just know that next week we're going to have the rest of the awards. So look forward to that. And then we go back to May 4th, the episode of Impact where Trinity arrives. That was one of their moments of 2023. And what we said in the May 4th edition of Impact Attack, Brandon, you felt that the promo was generic from Trinity. That's what you said. You said it was generic. It was like any of the things that you'd hear on the indies, like just generic indie babyface promo and all that, in which I also agreed. And I also pointed out that historically Trinity has never been what you would call a pipe bomber. She's not known for her promos per se. And I thought that even though it was nothing innovative or interesting, it was whatever needed to be that day. And it got interrupted by 2 people and turned into one of those, hit everybody's music segments anyways. But it was the main event of the show, so maybe people's expectations got built up. I also said, saying that now, this is live now, I'm saying that it's funny enough that the guy that's known for the pipe bomb came back and did a promo that everybody thought was too generic and not what they wanted either. So, sometimes when you're just coming into a place, either for the first time or after a long time, you got to chill out and reestablish everything before you can get into the spiciness. Now, it's fair to say Trinity never really got that spicy in the coming weeks and months and everything leading up till now, but that's really not her character. So her character has been about athleticism in matches and creativity in outfits. But what would you say? Would you say this was? I was just going to say, would you say this was a highlight moment of 2023, the arrival? And what have you thought of Trinity in her run so far? Still the champ.
I mean, the arrival was done well. It was a big moment for them. For them, it's a get. She's a star. She's over, and she'll draw. But I still feel the same way about the promo, where it was just came across too robotic, too generic, and she has shown that she can perform a lot better and they can get a lot more out of her when she's in a produced segment.
I concur with that. Um, yeah,
And obviously, she's doing really well. They have faith and trust in her to carry the division. So things are looking up, looking good.
I agree with that as well. Seems like we're on it. Um, and she wins Knockout of the Year as our next award. That's her. She's very happy. She cuts a nice little promo here. She shows off her plaque. And she also has what I really don't understand what this is. Maybe Liz can help me. Her eyeshadow. She had green eyeshadow, but it was like LED lights running back and forth. You know, like the kind of stuff you would see. You know, she had the Jeff Jarrett glasses, but like on just her eyeshadow. I was like, how does she do that? How does that done? It must be like it was her lashes? Liz says it was her eyelashes. It had to be more than just the eyelashes though. Like what did she do? Is that like a decal or something that you put on? Um it's the strip of her lashes? Hmm. I don't know.
I can see that working. Like you put the fake lashes on, the thing with the at the end where you attach to it would have that.
It looked like it was her eyelids to me, but I guess I could go back and look, but LED fake lashes. All right. Well, whatever it was, it looked cool and different and very on brand for her. So, that's what she did to accept the award. So, maybe it's not as slammies, but she's trying to spice it up. um, Speaking of slammies, we get Slammiversary. This is Trinity versus Deanna. This is where Trinity would win the Knockouts Championship. And so then, what we said back then was that this would be the July 13th episode of Impact Attack. If you'd like to go back and relive this coverage, what we said was that it was not their best psychology in the match, and not even their best work, but the message is Trinity has to protect her moves as well as, or Deanna has to protect her moves, because she gave her a pile driver on the apron and then just rolled her in and let Trinity kick out, which I went into a long explanation about why that shouldn't be. But you're not only protecting your own move, you're protecting the other person, you're protecting the business, you're protecting the show, you're protecting the other matches, you're protecting everything. So everybody needs to work harder on protecting things more. And that's something that can come with a reset, like what Stevie Richards is talking about. Like if we can start implementing some rules, but then that can also come along with the dangers of things. We can reestablish the danger of the apron. If you start pile driving people on the apron and then they get stretchered out, now we retrain the fans. We may have lost some of the old fans, but maybe children that are watching and becoming new fans, they see that and they start to be like, oh, the apron's dangerous. And then once they grow up to be wrestlers, maybe they'll be less inclined to do moves on the apron, because they'll have been trained that that's only for dangerous moments or stretcher job moments or things like that. So we may have to give up on this generation and just start for the next generation, right? But that's basically it, and that's our show, our recap show. And like I said, there was no Moose, which is like coal in the stocking. Very disrespectful to us as fans. Couldn't even give Moose a promo or anything, just something. But that's where we are. So. And that's where we were. And that's where we're going, because next week it's going to be even more of that. So, part two, the sequel.
Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, well, with Trinity's eyelashes, that'll be perfect. So yeah, not much else to say. I mean, we covered their coverage and we covered our coverage of their coverage. It's like one of those. Yeah, it's like an infinite perspective. You just keep going back. But yeah, I don't really have much else to add. So if you got anything to cap us off, then we can go with that. And if not, we can go straight into plugs.
I just can't wait till well, actually, this actually might not be a bad tactic because they're actually kind of making me want to see their original content and see what they do. So who knows?
That's true. Yep. This week is another recap. Recap to Electric Boogaloo starring Trinity. So look forward to that. Look forward to more awards. Look forward to more recaps. And I'll recomb through the archives and find out what we said about these things, these moments. Again, that took like way extra time. I could have just made the notes for this in like 20 minutes and sped through everything, but it actually took me a couple of hours to go back and like rewatch and find the spots in our episodes where we talked about it. And then I would get caught listening to something that we were talking about something else on the show and be like, huh, it's like we know what we're talking about. And then I stopped marking out for us and then moved to the relevant portion. All that just for a couple of lines. So, but that just goes to show you the level of dedication that we have. You know, it's almost like we are apologizing for Impact Wrestling's carelessness. So, yeah. And as the foremost and probably, you know, there's very few others anyway, Impact / TNA review podcast, it's our job to set the standard. If only we just had more people listening and watching, you know. It doesn't matter how many there are. If we had 1 million listeners in the chat, I'd want 1,000,002 listeners. You can always get your message out to more people, and that's what we like. So hopefully, and we've had some indications in the past that this program probably is being listened to based on things that have happened.
Yeah, where have the lights been?
Nowhere during these damn
no place for them.
Yeah, right. Even these award acceptance speeches, it just looked like they grabbed somebody and said, stand against this hallway and say like 30 seconds worth of stuff. So, yep, we'll see what happens with the TNA rebrand and everything, but yep, let's do that. We'll test recaps on Lab Rat next week. See how the recaps hold up and whether they're ready for the public. But that being said, I guess we should get on out of here. We should get on that sleigh and fly into the night. So Brandon, tell the people where they can find you.
As always, you can find me on Twitter, or as the kids call it this day, the X, at Transarchistia. I am also on Twitch at twitch.tv/MissTia the Transarchist, and I am also on Substack at HMG Brandon.
All right. And there won't be any punching up recaps, so
yeah, there's nothing to work with.
So they're giving you a break to refresh for their brand new show that's probably already going to need to be rewritten. So that'll be starting with Hard to Kill after that. So look forward to that. As for me, you can find me at Opinion Haver on all your favorite social media platforms, whatever the kids are calling it. You can also find me every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, for the Next Level Wrestling Review with Big Ray Hernandez. You can find me usually on the Sunday Wreckage, where we go through the Collision. Chris Ames has been out, but you can check out me and Jimmy T at least for the next foreseeable future at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on Sundays. What else? I was on the Monday Locker Room the last week, so you can check me out on there. Ben did a special Christmas one by himself today as we're recording this, but last week I was on and we talked about some other headlines and everything. So just keep your eyes peeled for HMG and you'll see everything. Sorry, Lab Rat with the pop for me. It said the first TNA show will be a recap of the pay-per-view. Yep, it's probably so. Best of Article 2024. So yeah, you can check me out on HMG and all those things, and then check out, of course, the top of our episode. We're talking about wrestling with Rip Rogers, Stephen P. New on the interview. If you need to sue, call Stephen P. New. Um, Stephen P. New was had a delightful chat with the guys, and they barely scratched the surface of anything. Um, on Wrestling with Rip Rogers, which also had Dan Matha as a guest. You may remember Dan Matha from his NXT run, part of the Outliers. But he's a Rip Rogers guy as well, and he lets you know what he's been up to, what he's going to be up to. And then, of course, you just add that to the string of amazing interviews, whether it's Les Thatcher and Dave Marquez, or whether it's Mark Henry, or whether it's Ace Steel. You're going to want to check out everything Wrestling with Rip Rogers is doing every Friday at their concrete time of whenever they go live. And that is, that's a show that I'm usually a part of, at least in spirit or in mention, if not physically on the show. But I don't know. I've talked about having Von Lilas come back on and with maybe me and Ray and talk some NXT, or maybe Von Lilas will come to the Impact Deck and talk about some recaps. Who knows? But we'll work something out, and I'll get back on Wrestling with Rip Rogers. I can't follow up these great guests, but we can definitely have a good time. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Stevie Richards earlier, he's got a new video talking about instant replay in wrestling, but he's still got his podcast, Big Fitness Show. He's still got his fitness channel, reviewing exercise equipment, telling you why the tonal is not something you should spend your money on in 2024. He's got his tech channel. Stevie Richards is doing way too much and still always evolving and retooling. So you're going to want to check out Stevie Richards. He may even have some holiday deals on some Stevie Richards fitness going on right now. Certainly affiliate links to give you discounts. So it's worth your while and your time and money to check out Stevie Richards. Check out Wrestling with Rip Rogers. Check out all of our shows at HMG. And check out whatever you want to check out besides all that. Don't let us push you around. But that being said, for Brandon, I'm the vet, and I don't have a sign-off line except for Merry Christmas, ho, ho, ho.
Ho!